Always have a recording. Y buenos días, muy buenos días a todos. Buenos días y bienvenidos, bienvenidas. Welcome to everybody. Um, we are here to do hopefully stress-free. I know sometimes I unintentionally do stress people out, not meaning to, but and if I ever do, always feel free to say that because you know what? Everybody else tells me when I stress them out. So why not you? So yeah, if something ever with homework or whatever doesn't quite, or it feels a little beyond the boundaries, always feel free to let me know because I always need feedback from people, always. And people here in this class will always be of different levels too, and that is absolutely okay. So we want to do some introductory things. And just some things that you know how the classes normally run. And this runs through the first thing I'm going to say, because there's always somebody who either forgets or just doesn't know. And, that is life. Fall with Scottsdale's courses is split into two separate sessions. It's like fall A and fall B. And that is mainly driven by the snowbird nature of our area. Because some people come here late in the fall. So, para que sepan, so you guys know, just so you guys know, if you're unaware and if you intend to be in both the first part of fall, which runs now through, think Halloween, end of October, and you also want to do the November through till close to Christmas time segment of fall, it is two separate registrations because there's always somebody who forgets and then they're very dismayed. I didn't know. So, okay, we've got that taken care of out of the way. Next thing on our little housekeeping is Zoom. Normally usamos the breakout rooms. Normally we use breakout rooms quite a bit. Today, I think we're going to do less of the breakout rooms, just that everybody is all together and there are one or two people joining who may never have or who very seldom use Zoom. And so we don't want to go into too many advanced things right off the bat. But normally I will have little prompts for you to work on, and you will normally go into some smaller groups of like 3 or 4 people to do some low-level practice where you get more face time with a smaller number of people. Today, we're not going to do that, but next session, we probably will. The last couple of things I want to bring up. With Zoom, always know you can turn on your chat box and send me or anybody else in the group if you want to do it, privately, little messages. You can type in messages if you wish. So feel free to turn on that chat box session. And lastly, but I probably should have put this first. Your mute button. There are those of us because, a lot of times we tend to forget there is a mute button on your Zoom. So please use it if you need it. Some people turn it on because they don't feel well, but they don't want to miss a class, so they just listen in. Some people turn it on. Always be aware if you've got furry buddies, as I do at home, but if you have, barking dogs, people working on home improvement or repair projects, and it's creating noise. If there's going to be background noise, please, for the benefit of really the whole group, please turn on your mute button if you've got background noise that's happening. Package delivery, the dogs go crazy, guys turning on power tools in your house, whatever it may be. Do use the mute button if there is background noise, because otherwise it starts to drown out things for people in the group as a whole. So that's just being good neighbors thing for everybody else in our group. Okay. Last bit of housekeeping. Sometime within the 24 hours after our class, and it varies depending on how fast I can get our recording to upload. I upload a recording of class so that if you're ever absent for any reason, you can go back and watch class if you can't physically be here. And I will also send you an email after class that will have the links to that recording and any links of information that I use or YouTubes that I want you to watch. So any information that I give you in a link, you're free to pull it in. Any of my files, you pull them in, save them to your system. You know, if you love paper and you're a paper person, you want to print it out, go crazy. Do what you want to do. Okay. A ver, let's see. I'm going to show you the little file that we're going to use, and para que sepan, so you know. If you printed this out, or if you know how to pull up two windows in your computer, some folks feel comfortable with that, some do not. Please know I will show this on the screen, so you know you don't have to do anything fancy. But this is the file we're going to use today. It's called Presentaciones, Introductions. Okay. And we're going to have everybody introduce themselves because we always have some new people in the group, and then we've got our veteran folks, veteranos. And so we're going to use these today to start some conversations and some easy stuff. You know, we want to start off with some easy things. So for those of you who need to find that, if you printed it or if you need to pull it up as a separate link, go ahead and gives you a couple minutes to get that organized. Okay. ¿Qué vamos a hacer hoy? What are we going to do today? Hoy vamos a hablar de nosotros mismos. We're going to talk about ourselves a little bit so that we can get comfortable with everybody. We're going to talk a little bit about some basic things you may want to start working on regarding pronunciation, and some tools you might use to help yourself with that. You know, there are always, I'm going to say, dueling opinions about how important is it to have good pronunciation in Spanish. How important is that? ¿Es importante? ¿No es importante? There are some camps where people say, well, you know, people have strong accents, and does it really matter? No. And there's a grain of truth to that. If you listen to Arnold Schwarzenegger talk, if you remember back in the day, Huffington Post lady, yeah, strong English accents, but you totally intelligent people, you absolutely understand everything they're saying, but they might have kind of you might term a thick English accent. Well, you know what? We all have accents, but there's some things that we can do to help make ourselves understood. The important thing to know about accents is that we want to be understood, and we all have accents. We all have accents. We have accents in English. We have accents in Spanish. We have accents as English speakers speaking Spanish. There are French people who have accents speaking Spanish. There are Italian people who speak Spanish with an accent. You see where I'm going with this. So, you know, what we want to do is make sure that we can be understood. So here's the important thing. We all have an accent, but we want to be understood. So I want to start off with a little bit about that, and then giving you some tools to maybe work on that on your off time between our classes. And then we also are going to talk a little bit, going back to a real basic about ser versus estar, one of those really basic things. versus, wow, all kinds of other really common verbs that we'll be needing to use going forward into conversations in the coming weeks. So, okay, vamos a empezar con acento, ¿sí? La manera de hablar, our ways of speaking. So we're going to watch a little shorty video that talks about just accents in general, which is actually kind of helpful. So vamos a ver, let's take a little listen here. A ver, pueden ver. Can you see the guy standing alone in the suit? Sí, pueden ver. Can you see?
Sí.
Okay, fantástico. Bien.
Have you ever found yourself speaking English with a weird hybrid accent when you go abroad? Or know someone who doesn't sound like a native speaker of a language even when they're fluent? This is why you have a different accent in a foreign language. The first reason is that sounds differ from language to language. Open a textbook, and one of the first things you'll see is an alphabet, explaining, for example, that the P in French is very different from the P in English. Hold the palm of your hand up in front of your mouth and say Paris in English. You'll feel a little puff of air on your hand. Now try the same thing again, but try to remove that puff of air, and you'll get something closer to the French sound. Papi.
And by the way, that is the same in Spanish.
Mhm.
You're not supposed to feel a puff of air when you pronounce anything with the P. Patron, por favor. You should feel very little air. But in English, boy, lots of air. So that's something that French has in common with Spanish, para que sepan. So, okay, I'm going to let him continue. Vamos a continuar.
Learning about letters individually tells you very little about how they work when they come together. For example, when certain consonant combinations are forbidden in your native language, you'll often find yourself inserting sounds to make them pronounceable in a foreign one. The reason a Spaniard might tell you that he is from Spain is because SP is just not possible at the beginning.
And that you will constantly hear with natives. And no matter how experienced they are, it is almost impossible for native Spanish speakers to eliminate that E in front of SP. ST and SP, when they start out a word, España, it is almost impossible. Spain, you'll almost always hear a really faint Spain from a native speaker speaking English. So again, this is about accents in general. These are just sound combinations that why do we have accents? Because these sound combinations are not comfortable for us. So that they're out there for all people with all different languages.
Spanish words. It's the same reason that when English commentators talk about the French footballer Kylian Mbappe, they often find themselves inserting a third syllable to make it more pronounceable. Mbappe. It's because in English, starting a word with an M and a B next to each other is just not done. So people find themselves subconsciously adapting words of a foreign language to fit the rules of their own.
Oh, yes. We subconsciously, meaning you don't mean to, but you do it anyway because it's natural. Subconsciously, we often adapt things into what we are comfortable with, what we've grown up with. Yeah. And that may not fit what the foreign language, the new language does. This is why we have accents when we speak a foreign language.
The next reason is stress. No, not that kind. It's where people put the emphasis on words. For example, all French words are stressed on the final syllable, usually with a higher pitch and greater volume.
And that doesn't happen necessarily in Spanish, not with all words, but yeah, this is a general rule thing.
That's why French speakers will call the Texan city Houston instead of the English Houston. Meanwhile, English words often have a secondary stress in addition to the primary one. Civilization, for example. Ditching your language's stress pattern is often very hard and is not always well taught. Other elements of a language's rhythm can be hard to pin down. Cantonese and Italian, for example, are syllable timed, which means that every syllable has roughly the same duration. If you repeat this sentence with every syllable roughly equally timed, you may find yourself halfway to imitating an Italian. Whereas in English, the stressed syllables come at roughly regular intervals, and the remainder are less distinctly pronounced. This is how you could distinguish Italian from English being spoken through a wall, even if you can't make out any individual words or sounds. If pronunciation, stress, and rhythm were better taught, you might not find yourself speaking like this next time you go on holiday.
Okay. Vale. There we go. So there's a little mini lesson. We all have accents. It's okay to feel comfortable or maybe not comfortable with that. But one of the points I want to make, and some of you have heard this before, but we're going to say it again, this bit of we subconsciously plant things in to our pronunciation in Spanish from English. This happens troublingly a lot. And the worst offender is the schwa sound. Oh my gosh, here comes my schwa speech. This sound in English, which is, here comes the sound, it's everywhere in English. About. Commit. Yeah. Okay. That sound. It's not it's not it's not oh, it's That schwa sound is everywhere in English. We love it in English. We use it all the time, but it starts to subconsciously bleed in to our Spanish, which becomes a very bad thing for you to be understood in Spanish, okay? So one pronunciation thing I want you to be conscious of and to really work on consciously is to eliminate the sound when you speak Spanish and really go with the vowels. So we're going to do a quick vowel rundown. Vowel rundown coming up. Aquí viene, here it comes. Aquí viene el repaso de vocales, vowel, vocales. Those vowels in Spanish, these vowels are, they will make you totally understood or totally unintelligible or so confusion. And you know what? Let's put this down at the bottom because don't we do that in English? A-E-I-O-U and sometimes why? Well, sometimes why? Seriously? Okay, we'll throw it in there just in case. Make sure not to do the schwa thing. And schwa, oh, you know what? I got to do a curve. Can I do this? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Ooh, oh, yeah, darn. Well, this isn't good because it's, yeah. You know, it's that upside down E thing. That's what they use to show us schwa. Yeah. But A-E-I-O-U, let's get this in again. Una vez más. Vocales. Make sure you pronounce your vowels super distinctly, because when we let the schwa sound bleed in, it can make it very confusing in Spanish for what you mean. Okay, so this letter here is always pronounced ah. And yes, you know what? Your jaw should drop a little bit. Keep it really super open. This letter here is always pronounced eh. And you kind of smile at the end. It's a little tighter. Yeah, not as much jaw drop. Not Okay, vale. This letter is always pronounced E. It's a tight sound, E. This letter is always pronounced O. Okay, and not O. Oh, English loves to do the O. Show me your work. Yeah. Let's go. Oh, cut it short. Oh, oh. And this one is tough because we have lots of schwa sounds in English that are spelled with this letter O. But in Spanish, it will never get a schwa sound. Oh, okay. And this letter, which usually is O, O, O. Sometimes this letter does go silent, right? When it's in a G-U-E or G-U-I combination, often it's going to go silent. When it's a Q-U-E for that word que, what, or quien, who, Q-U, then you go silent. But, generally the pronunciation when it is not silent is for this letter to be ooh, ooh. And, yeah, your lips really need to be rounded. Ooh, okay? So, a, e, o, u, but never uh. Try to eliminate that. This little letter down here is the Y, or well, sometimes it gets different names, this letter of the alphabet. But the important thing to know is it might have a couple of sounds. It might sound like that letra I. It might sound like this when words like I. When the Y, when the Y hangs out, when it's the very last letter of a word, like I, okay, or muy, it gets an I sound, right? But if the Y is not the last letter, if it hangs out someplace else inside of the word, then you will pronounce it usually like a Y, okay? Like the month of the year, mayo, right? So, okay. Vocales. Think about that. I'm going to show you one other bit of a snippet. And I said I wanted you to maybe have some tools. We're going to give you one tool. We're going to listen to one thing about working on pronunciation. A lot of times in Spanish, we also wind up getting some long words. And they're kind of stinkers, aren't they? He's going to show you an example in this little clip, because we're not playing the whole video, of a long word that he feels he needs to work on and a tool he uses. And this is partially a little bit of an explanation of something called shadowing. And shadowing in its more complicated forms is used where people repeat words or whole phrases and try to just repeat them pronounce them as exactly as they can, almost in tandem at the same time that they hear somebody saying the word. Okay, that's what shadowing is about. And this won't be strictly using shadowing, but it'll show you a little tool this gentleman uses. Sometimes it may be helpful, para que sepan, so you know, para que sepan. It may be helpful for you to work in between our classes on a little bit of shadowing with trying to reproduce sounds and work on your pronunciation with separate words and record yourself. And this is something that people are not super comfortable with all the time, listening to their own voice. I don't even like listening to my own voice, but sometimes it can be helpful. And most of you have, you've got the capability of recording on your own phone, your cell phones. So he's going to show you a little bit about how he uses that and one other extra web-based tool, which you're going to see. But he's going to talk about pronouncing long words and shadowing and pulling in, listening to a sound and trying to reproduce it. Listening to a sound and trying to reproduce it. So we're going to hear just maybe a 2-minute bit of
I
this.
take notes all the time of different Spanish words that I hear that I want to save for later or practice, and I basically have different categories. One is just vocabulary. I know how to pronounce it. I just want to save it for later so that I can look it up or remember it or add it to my Anki stack, and then I can practice and make sure that I've really mastered the use of that word. But another category I keep is words that are difficult for me to pronounce. And I add to this list a lot, especially when Maya and I are recording our podcast, Learn Spanish and Go. If you're ready for real Spanish conversations, then you should definitely check out the podcast. It's all in Spanish. And I mention this because every time I do a video by myself in English, someone comments, why didn't you just say it all in Spanish? Well, not everybody is at the level where they can understand full Spanish conversations. So if you are, check out the podcast. So in preparing for this video, I grabbed a few words from my difficult words to pronounce list so that I could walk you through my process of improving. I wrote down ejecutivo, executive,
There's a hard word to pronounce. Why is that hard to pronounce? Because it's got a bunch of syllables. Ejecutivo. Ejecutivo. Wow. Okay. And envejecer. That's a lot of syllables. Okay. Plus, they've got those J sounds, which are like a throaty H. Okay. So he's going to show you a little tool he uses to work on things that are hard to pronounce.
envejecer, to age, and acontecimiento.
Look at how many syllables. Acontecimiento. 6 syllables, 6 sílabas. Wow. That's why that's hard to pronounce, because it's a lot of syllables. Okay. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Yes. Mary Poppins comes to life. Here we go. I'm so glad a young person needs to wear glasses too.
Acontecimiento. Now, oftentimes you'll find that you can say a word out of context just fine, but when you put it in a sentence, that's where the trouble begins.
Yeah. Maybe you can say it in isolation, but when you've got to connect that word to other words in a sentence, it can be difficult. So that's why we're kind of watching this. Let's see what he uses.
And that's the same thing for me. So I'm going to show you how you can work through that. But first, you're going to want to know how to pronounce the word as is. Fortunately, there's a resource that shows you exactly how a native Spanish speaker would say pretty much any word. So
and this is going to be something that actually, when you need to look up a word, let's say for next week when you're doing some prep, if you've got a word you want to use and you feel that it's hard to pronounce, think about using this to hear a native speaker say it. So it gives you a pattern. Then you can go back, repeat the word, record yourself on your phone and see, was that the way I said that? Was that accurate compared to the resource? Yeah. Okay. This is kind of shadowing. You hear the word from one source, you try to repeat it right away and record yourself, and then listen to yourself. And when you listen to yourself saying that word, is that ugly, ugly American schwa sound sneaking in? So watch, be on the lookout for that. Okay, we're going to let
all you
it
need
go.
to do is copy the word that you want to practice and pop it into the unfortunately named SpanishDict.com. For this,
Yes, the unfortunately named Spanish Dict. We're not going to say why it's unfortunately named. American culture, you understand. Spanish Dict. Now, SpanishDict.com does have a pronunciation tool built in that is kind of helpful.
This example, I'm going to grab the word that's giving me the most trouble right now. So you can just go ahead and copy and paste that word into Spanish Dict, and you'll be taken to a page where you can read the definition, see different examples, and listen to the pronunciation.
Okay, so it gives you the word acontecimiento, and the little icon is, what does it sound like? Yeah, so he's going to show you that. It gives you a definition, and then it gives you an example of that word in context.
I've never actually even gone to this tab before, but if you click here,
acontecimiento.
I want you to notice this because it may be over your head, but I want you to notice this. They show a person's face saying the word. Who cares? Because she's pretty? No. Well, maybe that was part of it, but When you plug a word into this, watch the mouth. Watch the mouth, because part of our issue is those muscles in your mouth, your jaw, your throat. Watch her mouth. Acontecimiento. You will see where her jaw drops, where she does an oh, acontecimiento. Watch her lips and her mouth. That really can be helpful. Look at yourself in a mirror when you say that word. Does your mouth do the same thing? It may seem like a small thing, but actually that matters, okay? To get the sounds out of your mouth the same way.
A, con,
te, si,
miento.
miento.
Isn't that awesome? A native Spanish speaker will pronounce the word as is and then slow it way down. But remember, as I mentioned before, it's one thing to just copy someone, it's another to hear yourself copying them. That's how you're really going to be able to tell how close you're matching the standard, basically, the person you're trying to copy, a real native Spanish speaker. So I'm gonna go ahead and listen again, and then I'm gonna make my own recording to compare.
Acontecimiento. A, con, te, si, miento.
So getting it going from that slow word to saying just the word itself can be tough, but I want you to watch what he does. He's going to record himself, and I know that may feel uncomfortable for you, but it's a great tool to use.
Okay, let's give it a shot. So I'm gonna pull up a voice recording app on my phone and then try recording. Acontecimiento. 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 And I'm gonna listen back. Acontecimiento. 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 And I'm gonna compare it to the standard.
Acontecimiento. A, con, te, si, miento.
I'm gonna try again, and then I'm gonna copy every time she slows a part of the word down. Acontecimiento.
Acontecimiento. A,
A,
con,
con,
te,
te,
si,
si,
miento.
miento. Acontecimiento. I think that was pretty good. But again, this is just going to show you where any glaring issues in your pronunciation are.
So, acontecimiento should not be acontecimiento, aconta. There's a schwa. Acontecimiento. Okay, so I'll give you the link to that whole video. I'm not going to show the whole thing now. It's just to show you how he uses what they call shadowing. And you can watch the rest of the video later if you feel like it or not. Oh, no. Depends on how you feel. But shadowing can be a helpful thing. You have to be willing to listen to yourself or recording yourself. But it can be super helpful for you to be on the lookout for, getting your pronunciation a little bit better. And why do we want our pronunciation to improve? So that we make sure we're making those sounds purely so that we can be understood more easily by native speakers when we talk. Okay.
Marilyn, can I add a quick comment?
Mm-hmm.
So, I started your classes knowing literally, about 8 words of Spanish. And so everything, over the last, I don't know how long we've been doing this, a year and a half now, it's great. It's learning. And this was, you spent the first couple of weeks, the first go around doing this kind of stuff. The one thing that I've noticed, and I fall into it myself sometimes, because in other languages, the e for the, in English, the e, in Spanish, the e, in other languages, depending on where it's used, it sounds more like a long a. And what I've noticed is a lot of us in your classes, including myself, get trapped right there. And so personally, I just said, in terms of pronunciation stuff, the last, I don't know, couple of months, I was really focused on that one letter because I know that I fell into that trap more so than the trap.
Okay, yeah, see, yeah, that sound. A lot of times it's described as kind of a cross between a short e and the long a sound. Well, what is that? What is that? Yeah, but it's eh. And look at my mouth. Acontecimiento, Yeah. Vale. Okay. Yeah, the word for okay. Okay. Vale. Eh. You kind of almost end in a smile. But you don't want it to be a.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say, also with that sound, there's no use of your tongue in that sound. It's it's but when you turn it into that long a, then your tongue starts to stick out.
Uh-huh.
So I'm kind of like trying to hold it back.
Yeah, and part of the reason that whole pronunciation piece can be tough is that really your tongue muscles, your lip muscles, your facial muscles, even into your throat, they all get involved. And we just don't isolate those muscles. We don't think about them. We just use them. And we want something to compare it to go into the new language, be it Spanish, French, German, lo que sea, whatever it may be. And gracias, thank you. Yeah. There are all kinds of little traps and we can go down lots of holes, rabbit holes, that can be tough. But some things to be aware of, because as you move through and as we get little prompts every week, I usually give some kind of prompts for people to talk about so they can prep for the next week. When you need to look up a new word, because you need to look up a word. And if you need to practice pronouncing it, that little video may help. And by the way, later in the video, he also goes into how if you are a person who is musical, if you play a musical instrument, yo no toco nada, I play nothing, but if you know anything about music, there are elements of practicing music that are extremely similar to practicing in a foreign language. And if you want to see how that connection is similar, you can listen to that. Okay. A ver. So I'll give you some links to all of those so you can ponder that, think about it. Vamos a practicar. Ahora vamos a practicar. Now we're going to do some practicing. Y vamos a presentarnos. We're going to introduce ourselves to each other a little bit. And normalmente practicamos un poquito en grupos pequeños. Normally we practice in smaller groups, but today we're going to do a little bigger group. So, and if you don't feel comfortable speaking today, I want you to know that is okay. You may choose to not contribute, but I would love for you to dive in if you want to do that. And we call this presentaciones because introducir, which sounds like the English to introduce, introducir means to put something inside of something else. So we're not doing that. Yeah, vamos a presentarnos. We're going to introduce each other, each to the other. And we're going to talk a little bit about this. I'm not going to play this video in class, but this was a nice little video. You may, if you didn't get a chance to do it, watch it later. It talks about introducing yourselves in different scenarios, like at work, at an exercise class, just in a park, in different situations. There are different ways to introduce ourselves. So it gives you all of that. Aquí tenemos, sí, en página número 3, page 3, we've got some ideas of how to talk about ourselves a little bit. And I want people to, if you feel comfortable, talk a little bit about yourself. And I'm going to start. Voy a empezar aquí hablando de de yo misma. Talking about my name. Me llamo Marilyn, Marilyn, me llamo Marilyn. Bien. Bueno, ¿a qué te dedicas? ¿A qué te dedicas? This is a question you may ask people to ask them what they do. ¿A qué te dedicas? Literally, what do you dedicate yourself to? And often you won't even use this verb, te dedicas, in your answer. Okay. A ver, ¿a qué te dedicas? Soy maestra de español, pero generalmente estoy jubilada. Trabajo un poco, trabajo 3 o 4 días de la semana y soy maestra, ¿sí? Bien. ¿Por qué quieres practicar español? Yo quiero practicar español porque me interesa y me gusta viajar y me gusta comunicar. Quiero comunicar con mucha gente. Quiero comunicar con vecinos, con amigos que tengo que son de otros países, etc. Tell us 2 interesting things about yourself. What you're interested in, what you generally do, what you've done generally. 2 cosas interesantes. Vamos a ver. Bueno, a ver, 2 cosas interesantes de, hablando de mí misma, talking about myself. Bueno, soy una persona creativa, pero es difícil trabajar con las cosas creativas aquí en mi casa porque tengo cinco mascotas. Y las 5 mascotas caminan en las mesas, caminan por todas partes y es difícil coser, it's hard to sew, es difícil crear cosas, make cosas con muchas piezas, things with many pieces, ¿sí? Porque los gatos caminan por todas partes en mi casa. Es difícil. Entonces, sí, soy una persona creativa y dos, la segunda cosa, la segunda cosa es que bueno, me gusta hacer ejercicio, me gusta estar en la naturaleza, me gusta caminar, me gusta dar caminatas, I like to hike, me gusta montar en bicicleta de montaña, I like to mountain bike, me gusta estar afuera, outside, al aire libre, in the open air, al aire libre, en la naturaleza. ¿Bien? Ok, vale. Bueno, I would like you to use some of these, and they don't have to be exact, but use some of these ideas. Anybody who wants to volunteer, going ahead, telling us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I want to get it out of the way, so I'll do
Bien,
it.
bueno. Eres valiente. You are brave. Okay. Vale.
Yes,
Bueno,
yes.
Marcos.
Me llamo Mark. Pero en estos clases, a Marilyn le gusta llamarme Marcos.
Eso es, sí.
Su jubilado, me dedicaba un ingeniero química.
Okay. A shorter way to say that is just soy. Soy ingeniero de química. Or if you use the Me dedicaba, I used to be, me dedicaba a la ingeniería química, a la ingeniería química. But the shortest,
I meant to say dedicaba, but I wrote down dedicabo.
okay, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we don't want to dedicabo. Me dedicaba. I used to be. Me dedicaba a la ingeniería. And the odd thing about this question will usually be phrased as ¿a qué te dedicas? What do you do? Or if you put it in the past, what did you used to do? Yeah. ¿A qué te dedicabas? Okay, so that might be phrased either way. Usually, though, most people will put this in presente.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to presume you're retired, right? They don't want to presume. So most people will phrase this in presente. And then when they answer, they may put it into the past if they no longer actively work. Yeah. But ¿a qué te dedicas? Oddly enough, when we answer this, most people will answer it not with the te dedicas or the me dedico. Most people will answer it with, they may answer it with me dedico. I dedicate myself too. But usually they're just going to go right into that easy verb to use. Soy, I am. Soy. Bien? Okay, vale. Continúa, Marcos. Continúa. Keep going.
Okay. Aprender español era un objetivo de mi jubilación.
Un objetivo, una meta, a goal. Here is a word I would like you to build into your vocabulary. And you know what? I'm going to put it on my share screen. I'm going to plug it right into this número 3. Una meta, a goal. Mr. Musk's company, Meta, is Meta, not the same thing, yeah? Or not Mr. Musk, Mr. Zuckerberg, el señor Zuckerberg, see? Meta. And there's that sound, meta, goal. Okay, aprender español era una meta de la jubilación. Perfecto. Okay, ¿y algo más, Marcos?
Sí, soy de Nueva York, pero viví en Houston durante 40 años.
Bien. Okay. Origen. Origin. Importante. Where you're from. Will you ser with that? We're going to come back to that idea later on. Bien.
Y me gusta ir a partidos deportivos y verlos por la tele.
Okay. Bien. Vale. Gracias. Muy bien. Very well. Vamos a ver. ¿Quién? Who wants to be next? ¿Quién
I'll
quiere?
give it a try.
Bueno, Lori, sí.
Trato de-
Dinos algo. Tell us something.
Pero no tengo las preguntas. So this is off the top of mi cabeza.
Okay. ¿Puedes ver? Can you see the ones on the share screen?
Oh, yeah, sí.
Okay. Vale.
Me llamo Lori. Fui enfermera hace casi 2 años. Paré trabajando. I stopped working.
Dejé
Parar.
de trabajar. Dejé de trabajar. And I'm going to put it up next to our jubilado sentence here. And this is a past. This is I stopped.
Okay.
Okay. Dejé de trabajar and then you want to give a year. ¿Sí? Por ejemplo, dejé de trabajar en 2018. Dejé de trabajar. And we got to punch that second dejé de trabajar and then you name your year. Or maybe
Okay.
it's a month.
So, en punto. Dejé de trabajar en 2021 de diciembre de 3 diciembre
El 13 de
a
diciembre.
las 7:30 de la mañana.
¡Wow! A las 7:30 de la mañana.
¿Sí?
Tú
Trabajo.
trabajabas, you used to work, tú trabajabas por la noche.
Sí, sí.
Ah, es muy difícil trabajar por la noche.
Es porque muy feliz dejé de trabajar.
Bien. Bueno, me gusta. Algo más, Lori. Anything else? Algo más.
Let's see. Me gusta la lengua de español. Quiero hablar mejor porque es una buena idea para el cerebro.
Ah, sí, porque es buena idea usar el cerebro, ¿sí? Usar el cerebro aquí dentro, el cerebro. Eso es, exactamente. Tienes razón, you are right. Ok, vale. Gracias.
Me gusta golf, pero no jugo bien.
No juegas bien, no juegas bien.
No, y no dice keep score. I don't keep score.
Oh, no hago caso, I don't pay attention, no hago caso a los números. Sí, bien.
Y me gusta leer. Leí un libro muy excelente. Se llama Hola, hermano. Hola, hermana. The book was called Hello, Beautiful.
Oh, hermoso. Hola,
Sí.
hermoso, beautiful.
Well, it was referring to daughters, hijas. So,
Oh, hija,
Hola.
ok.
Hola, hermosa.
Hermosa, hola, hermosa.
Por
Bien.
Anne Napolitano. Muy
Uy,
excelente.
Lori, ¿es un libro en español?
No.
Oh, no.
No.
Ok,
Demasiado difícil.
demasiado difícil. A veces sí, es difícil. Es difícil escoger un libro del nivel correcto para leer a veces. Ok,
Sí.
gracias. Bueno, de veras, Lori, ¿te gusta el golf? ¿Te gusta el golf? Yo no tengo ningún talento con el golf. Yo traté de jugar 2 veces al golf. Traté de jugar, de practicar el golf 2 veces. Un fracaso total, complete failure. Fracaso total. No tengo paciencia. No soy una persona paciente. Y por eso para mí el golf es casi imposible. Admiro mucho.
Tal vez si te toma una cerveza primero, mejor.
Es buena idea tomar una cerveza, una pequeña cerveza así antes de jugar, practicar al golf. Sí, tengo que pensar en eso. Gracias. Bueno, a ver, muy bien. ¿Quién más? Who else? ¿Quién quiere hablar? Who wants to talk a little bit? Un poquito.
I'll try it. Me llamo, disculpe, por favor.
No, está bien.
Me llamo Patricia. soy jubilada, pero me dedicaba un miembro de un grupo de precisión para regulación de agua y Centro de Estudiar Superiores.
Okay. You lost me a little bit in that. ¿Puedes
Okay,
repetir un poquito, no?
I am retired now,
Sí, sí.
but when I was working, they translates to member of a group, presión, a lobbyist. And I lobbied on behalf of water regulation.
Ah,
Okay.
okay. Okay.
Ujú.
Bien.
Let's see. Quiero aprender español porque hay mucha gente quien no habla inglés, pero habla español. Y mi esposa y yo viajamos mucho. Hago joyería, me gusta ir y me gusta ir a museos.
Okay. Bien.
Seco.
Bien. Muy bien. Bueno, aquí donde vivimos, en Arizona, es muy útil, it's very useful, es muy útil hablar español, claro, porque estamos aquí en Arizona, estamos muy cerca de la frontera. We are very close to the border. Estamos muy cerca de la frontera. Así que hay mucha gente aquí en Arizona que habla español. Así que es muy útil, it's very useful, hablar español. Bien. Eso es. Bueno, a ver. Ok. Vale, muy bien. Vamos a ver. Ok, ¿quién? Hay más, Patricia, ¿hay más o no?
No más.
Ok, vale.
Está bien.
¿Quién quiere hablar un poquito más? Who else would like to say a little bit about themselves? Sí o no? Sí o no? Está bien. It's okay if you choose. Ah, Rita, dinos algo. Tell us something.
I try it. Okay.
Está bien. You're good.
Me llamo Rita. Yo soy jubilada.
Jubilada.
¿Ya? Necesito mucho práctica escuchando y hablando español. Me gusta viajar a países de habla mexicana y me gustaría poder hablar en su idioma.
En su idioma, in their language, sí.
Right? Estoy empezando a aprender español un año.
Un año, solamente un año.
Poquito palabras.
Okay, está bien.
Let's see. Two things about me. Let's see. Estoy planeando un viaje a Cuba y
Un viaje.
estoy emocionado de experimentar y cultura.
Bien. Okay. And here is one word. Actually, I'm going to take you off the stop share and I'm going to show you. There's one little word I want to point out.
Huh?
And when I do this, it's so that you can, get used to this pronunciation bit a little bit more. Un poquito más. Here was one little word I heard. This word for many, many, many people, even if they speak for quite a long time, can be really troublesome.
Okay.
And I'm going to show you why. Es lógico. It is logical. Look at those two. Whoa, there are a lot of similarities in there. And many times when what we really mean to say is viaje, what comes out is something that sounds more like this, viejo or vieja. Viaje es trip, traveling, yeah? Okay. Viejo, old. But look at that. They are different only in that one troublesome little sound. Viaje, viejo. Viaje, viejo. Para que sepan. So, so watch for that. Yeah, watch for that little thing. These little things that can help us to focus in on things that give us trouble. And if you never feel self-conscious about making a mistake, because you have to make mistakes to get better. We have to make mistakes to get better. Así es, so it is. Okay, vale, algo más, Rita.
One more thing. Yo juego pickleball casi todos los días. Es muy divertido. Es muy divertido.
Es muy divertido jugar al pickleball. Y no hay palabra específica para pickleball. Es una palabra prestada. That is a borrowed word. We just have to use pickleball.
Yeah.
See, bien? I keep looking for pickleball, and it's new enough that there is not really an adaptation. Es muy popular jugar al pickleball. Es un deporte muy popular aquí en Estados Unidos, ¿verdad? Ok. Hay cuatro canchas. Canchas son courts, a place where you play, ¿sí? Un lugar de jugar un deporte. Hay 4 canchas de pickleball cerca de mi casa. Y es extremadamente popular. Sí, las canchas cerca de mi casa siempre están llenas de gente. Hay gente jugando al pickleball a todas horas del día, all hours of the day, siempre. Es tan popular. Y aquí, here is a word that is super easy to, popular. Schwa sounds all over it. Popular. Popular. Es popular.
Sí, bonito.
Sí, bien. Muy popular. Y me gustaría aprender el deporte de pickleball. Y a veces es difícil jugar porque es tan popular. Siempre hay personas jugando. Es difícil obtener una cancha. Hard to get a court. Es difícil. Ok, vale. Gracias. Muy bien. ¿Hay alguien más? Anybody else who wants to pop in with something? ¿Sí o no? You know? Okay. Vale. Bueno. These are things that are good for us to practice. Okay, so I want you to keep in mind our little pronunciation tips. I'll send those to you in the email. I want to shift to something a little bit different. This was much requested, by the way, by a number of people as something to work on. And what I want to focus on today, we're going to use the last half hour to talk a little about this, is some really common verbs that you probably already know how to use, but you know what? They trip us up. And the idea we're going to work on today is a little bit more as a review, un repaso, a review, un repaso de ser y estar, ser, estar. This is a tricky thing because, well, it's as absolutely basic as the idea of how to say is. But of course, in English, it becomes I am versus you are versus he is, one person, she is. And we don't say they is. We then switch to they are. And then we keep it, we are, okay? So am, is, are. Now, sadly, am, is, are, a lot of times we can't translate word for word, but two of the verbs, and by the way, in Spanish, many verbs in Spanish, different ones, will sub im for am, is, are in different situations. So, okay, it becomes more complicated, but we're going to go down to a real basic core of ser versus estar. Spanish, sadly, and by the way, depending on whether you're talking about weather versus how, like sensations, bodily sensations people feel, like I am cold, she is hot because it's over 100 degrees, stuff like that. Because those situational contexts in Spanish may require more verbs, other verbs that are not even ser and not even estar. And we're going to expand on that a little bit later on. Okay. But we're going to start with the ser estar because at its very simplest level, Spanish does not have one verb as the equivalent of the English to be. Yeah. And even in English, be sure doesn't sound like I am, he is, they are. It's totally weird in English, and it's kind of weird in Spanish. But to make it more complicated, there are two verbs that are both translated as to be. So we're going to do a review of this simply because for a lot of people, it is kind of a problem. And it might be a problem in some contexts, but not in others. Okay, so we're going to take a look at why we've got these two verbs in Spanish that both, why did they do this to us? Ser and estar. Ser and estar, they both mean to be. And I'm going to send you this, so don't feel you got to copy things off the screen. No es necesario. It's not necessary. You'll get the link to this, this page here. But, you know, one of the things that we learn is that ser is used more or less for kind of permanent things. Something is a certain way. Okay, that helps kind of. And that estar is used for temporary things. And that kind of is true. But those rules won't always help you. And the fact of the matter is when you speak, it becomes more complicated because now you are trying to like keep all these crazy stinking rules sorted out in your head. And then mentally you're doing gymnastics to try to figure out which word do I use? Do I use a form of ser, which will be soy, eres, es, somos for we or son, or do I use estoy for yo, estás, Está, estamos, we are, están, they are. Do I use these verbs in their conjugation? Okay, so we're going to kind of take it down a notch, and I'm going to send these to you, and I'm going to kind of help you navigate what does this mean, because this is all in Spanish. So, okay. Some people are comfortable with and are organized. Si eres una persona organizada, if you are a very organized person and your brain just works as, I must know the rules. I must know the rules. I have people who feel very strongly this way. I must know the rules. Okay. For some people, that can be something that holds them back. But if you must know the rules, here are some rules that are helpful. Ser we tend to use in certain situations, and it's good to know in general what the situation is. Usos, la fecha, la fecha. When we talk about dates on a calendar, time markers. Yeah. Here's a situation where we tend to use ser. And this really has nothing to do with permanent or temporary or any of that stuff. But when we talk about time, be it time on your watch, time on a calendar, days, dates, months, right? Years, anything with a time marker, fecha, date, we use ser. Okay? So, presente. Hoy es abril, hoy es el 25, hoy es el 25 de abril de 2018. Today is April 25th, 2018. If you were talking in the past, it would just change from es to era. If you don't want to make the leap from present to past, don't worry about that part. But ayer era martes el 24 de abril. Yesterday was Tuesday, 24th of April. So we're going to see some context uses of using ser to talk about time markers. See, es el 4 de junio. It's the 4th of June. Okay. Cuando naciste, when were you born? Nací el 3 de abril de 1994. I was born on the 3rd of April, 1994. ¿Cuándo murió tu abuelo? El 10 de julio de 2010. En julio, right? En 2010, in 2010. But notice, whenever we talk about time, hoy es el, ¿sí? Hoy es el 11 de septiembre. Hoy es el 11 de septiembre. Es el 11 de septiembre. Es lunes. It's Monday. Es lunes. When we use ser to talk about la fecha, the date, because we're just identifying this time marker. And a good way for you to think about ser is we use it to identify things and people. Things and people. So when you identify the time, when you mark the time, we use ser. We don't use, estar with that. Okay? Even with time, son las, son las 11 menos cuarto. It's about 10:45. Son las 11. We're marking the 11 o'clock hour minus a certain number of minutes. Son las 11 menos cuarto, menos 15, 15 minutes till 11. Son las 11 menos 15, 15 minutes till 11. Okay? So we use ser with time markers. We use ser with profesión. And here is where I often hear people mess up a little bit. Even though this one kind of should be obvious, English speakers tend to mess up on this. When you tell what your job is or what your job was, we use ser. And again, I want you to think ser is used to ID. It puts an ID, it puts a little sticker name tag on something. Yeah. It puts a little name tag on things and people. Ser, when we talk about what people do as a job, right? Or what their relationships are relative to other people. Por ejemplo, okay, the example you see here. Yo soy profesora. I am a teacher. Mi madre era abogada. That just puts it into the past. Again, if you don't want to do the past part, don't stress it out. Yeah, but era would be a was. She was. Mi madre era abogada. My mom was a lawyer. We could even take it a little bit. Mi madre fue abogada por 10 años. If I mark it by a specific number of years, it's past. Don't worry about the past examples too much, but do focus on this. Yo soy profesora, soy maestra, soy, even if I take a beyond the profession thing, anytime I talk about relationships, professions, jobs, relationships to other people, they identify who people are. We use ser. Soy madre de 2 hijos. I'm a mom of 2 kids. Soy madre. It's not a job anymore, right? Soy madre, but it's a relationship. Soy madre. Whenever we use identify a person by a job or a relationship, soy vecina la señora Garcia es mi vecina. Mrs. Garcia is my neighbor. La señora Garcia es mi vecina. She is my neighbor. Neighbor isn't her job, but relationship-wise, it's who she is relative to my little world, right? So we use ser to talk about putting a name tag on, identifying who somebody is or what something is, right? Característica. Here's where we
Could
get
I-
in. Sí.
Could I ask a question before
Sí.
you move on? So when talking about the profession in the past, because I said fui enfermera, should I have said era enfermera?
Yeah.
Generally, if you're not marking it with an end date or with a number of years, like a duration, it should be usually era. Usually.
But since I did an end date, it was okay to use fui?
When we do an end date, it's okay to use fui.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. But when people are talking very general terms, they tend to use era more to say was. Okay? Bien. So here's what I want you to stay away from. Here's what I hear people using sometimes. People saying things like, let's take the idea of nurse, enfermera, nurse. We never use mi amiga, my friend. My friend is a nurse. Mi amiga está enfermera. No. We do not use está with jobs or relationship name tags. With ID, identification, we do not use está. So a lot of times I hear people saying, oh, ella está enfermera. No. That's the one thing you want to like stay away from as if it were the plague. Right? Never está with a job or está with a relationship name tag. Yeah. Always ser. Mi amiga es enfermera. Mi vecino es contador. My neighbor is an accountant. Right? Somos amigos. We are friends. Never estamos amigos. When we put a name tag on something and we identify it, always ser. Ser is an ID tag. It is. Okay. Okay. The característica, the characteristic is where we're going to have maybe some little bit to work on. So but we'll talk about this as a general introduction. Ser is used for characteristics, meaning the way a person or a thing usually is. What that thing or person is usually like, not how they feel, but what they are like, really. Okay, because again, characteristics are like a name tag. Okay, and you're talking about general things, the way, the manner in which that person generally behaves. Okay, which is a separate issue from how they feel. Okay, we're going to come back to that later, but we're going to take a quick look at característica because a lot of people have trouble going from number 3 on this list, característica, characteristic, to condición, condition. Okay, bien. Característica is, again, kind of a name tag, kind of an ID. Slap a label on it and stick it on. It's usually this way. That's característica. Condición is sometimes. So we'll come back to condición in a minute, en un minuto. Let's look at característica. Ser, característica. Pedro es amable. Pedro is nice, kind, good guy. Amable. Okay? Es amable. Es delgado. He's thin. That's a characteristic. He's generally thin. You know? If he goes on vacation and pigs out for a month of vacation and eats nothing but bonbons and ice cream all vacation, okay, maybe that'll, yeah. But, generally he's a thin guy. Es delgado. And the bottom here just gives you the past form of that. Again, that word era, which is past. So don't worry about the past too much. Okay. Hora is just an expansion of this fecha thing. Think in terms of whenever I talk about time, whether it's a date on the calendar, a day on the calendar, a number marker on a calendar, or time, we use ser. Okay, so helpful to know. Any kind of time markers, we use ser. Okay. Origin, we use ser. So when Marcos gave us a thing about soy de Nueva York, I'm from New York, yeah, we use ser. We use ser to talk about origin, where somebody is from. Let's think about that. This goes back a little bit to the idea of that permanence thing. Where you are from, where you were born, it is impossible to change. It is that way. You are from there. You are never going to be from somewhere else, right? Soy de Michigan. I'm from Michigan. I was born there. That is never going to change. It's not where I live now, but soy de Michigan. Okay, originalmente. And the example they give you, because quite often we use these with countries more. You should get used to using with countries more. Soy de Colombia. I'm from Colombia. Soy de Estados Unidos. I'm from the United States. Soy de Estados Unidos. Okay. And again, they give you the past. Don't focus on the past. But again, the past becomes the word era. Era was from. Mi madre era de Argentina. Yo soy de origin. Okay. Relación. And relación, like profesión, like profession, relationships are ser. Again, they ID. So Nate es mi esposo, because the lady who made this up, her husband's name is Nate. Se llama, su esposo se llama Nate. Nate es mi esposo. Nate es mi esposo is my husband. When we use relationship words like esposo, husband, hijo, son, abuelo, grandparent, vecino, neighbor, colega, colleague, a coworker, colega. All those relationship words, yeah, we use ser. So notice something. When we talk about time, when we talk about identifying, putting an ID tag on a thing or a person, we use ser. Okay. When we talk about where somebody is from, that is unchanging, we use ser. When we talk about characteristics, and that's where we're going to have a little bit of a hang up, we use ser. Okay. So now let's take a look at the other side of the coin. And the other side of the coin, or the other verb we often use, is estar, right? Estar talks about states, but really, quite often when you're speaking, you need to know like a 50-50. You got the 50-50 thing. Do I use ser? Do I use estar? And you want to whittle it down to not like 20 rules, which if you want to get picky, you can, but your brain is not going to do that when you're speaking. That's not going to happen. We want to get down to situations. Estar is used posición, position. So when we talk about, actually, I would have lumped these together. Posición, lugar, ubicación. These things on the right-hand side, position, place, location. Posición, lugar, place. Ubicación, again, means location. We use estar for location of things or people. Not events. You're going to listen to a video this week, and they're going to talk about events. And that's going to throw you a little curveball, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole yet today. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about when we use estar. We use estar to talk about a location or a position of a thing or a person. Okay. Bien. So, por ejemplo, let's look at this posición. Mi celular está encima del escritorio. My cell phone is on top of the desk. Okay. And they give you the past. Don't worry about the past part of it. Estaba is the past, but está. Mi celular está encima del escritorio, where that thing I call my cell phone is located. Okay. We can talk about this where people are located. Estoy en la, número 2, number 2 on this list. Estoy en la oficina. I'm in the office. Vale, bien. And they give you a past. Don't focus on the past. Focus on the present one. Estoy en la oficina. Okay. It does not really matter if this location is temporary or permanent. So let me take this one step beyond what you see on this little page. Estoy en la oficina. I'm in the office. But. Vancouver está en Canadá. Vancouver está en Canadá. Vancouver is in Canada. Now, Vancouver that's pretty permanent, isn't it? Vancouver is they're not going to pick up the whole city of Vancouver and move it anytime soon, unless an earthquake happens. Ojalá que no. Hopefully not. Bien. So, estar with locations, that permanent temporary thing doesn't matter very much. It doesn't matter. It might be changeable. It might be permanent. Estar with location. Bien? Location of things, location of geographical places. There we go. Okay. Estar is used for continuous actions. So when we talk about things happening in real time, estoy hablando con ustedes ahorita. I am talking with you guys right now. Estoy pensando en ser y estar. I'm thinking about ser and estar. We use estar and we pair it up with a second verb to talk about what is going on in real time. In real time, right now. Okay, so the example they give you, estoy estudiando español con mi maestra. I am studying Spanish with my teacher because it's happening right now. And we pair up estoy with estudiando, that ando yendo, to give it the ing, studying. Bien? Okay. And they put in a past. Don't worry about the past. Actually, I think I'm going to change up this list a little bit and take all the past references out to make it a little bit simpler for you, for your notes for studying. Here are the two that might cause people some trouble with estar. Condición and emoción. Condition and emotion. How is that different from a characteristic? Here's where some mental gymnastics comes into play, sadly. But we want to maybe make it less mental gymnastics for you. When we come back next week, we'll start to practice this a little bit more. Condición means something that is easily changeable. It is not part of a characteristic that identifies what something is. It is a condition that might change. So the example they give you, el café está frío. El café está frío. The coffee is cold. El café, coffee, can be hot or cold or somewhere in the middle, right? Some people like iced coffee. Some people like hot coffee. But the temperature of that liquid inside is easily changeable. And that is what we mean by condición. Condición. And this is something where we who speak English, we can overthink it. We often tend to overthink this. Let me give you an example of how that word frío might be a little bit different and maybe can't use estar. Usually it does use está, usually. But here's a maybe odd situation where maybe I don't use estar. If I'm talking about an ice cube, ice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does ice have to be cold in order to be ice?
Cold.
Sadly, if I talk about, and notice this is not the usual use of cold, is it? It's not the usual everyday use. It's kind of a specific thing. Ice is cold. So if I want to talk about el hielo, ice, el hielo es frío, ice is cold. Now I'm talking about something that is not really a condition. In order to be ice, it has to be that thing we call cold. But most of the things that we describe as cold are not ice. Yeah, most of the things we describe about as cold are things that, you know, you can use as changeable. So está is more like the normal thing, right? Okay. So yeah, here we go. And I'm gonna rework this so that it takes all the past stuff out so we don't like overthink this. And emoción, emotion, okay? Emotion uses estar. Emotion uses estar. Estoy feliz porque hoy es mi cumpleaños. I'm happy because it's my birthday. And look at what happens here. Estoy feliz porque hoy es mi cumpleaños. I'm happy because today is my birthday. Estoy feliz. I am happy. I feel. Estoy feliz. Okay, bien. It is a feeling I have, but hoy es mi cumpleaños. Today is my birthday. I'm just stamping that today is a particular date. And I'm telling you what today is. Hoy es mi cumpleaños. I switched to ser. Importante. So there is a little cheesy, silly phrase, a silly mnemonic device for how you feel or where you are. Always use the verb estar. And that is helpful. For how you feel or where you are, always use the verb estar. So here we go. I am going to give you a little homework and some things to think about. Here are the things you're going to think about, some adjectives, because the funky, weird, difficult thing with ser estar is that conditions and feelings versus characteristics. And so I want you to think about some of these, and I sent this ahead for some folks. This is going to be, I want you to use some ideas and create some sentences, maybe with some of these description words. What it comes down to is description words sometimes use ser, sometimes use estar. And I'm going to give you a little video to watch to help you with ser and estar. ¿Dónde está? Where is it? It is here. Ser and estar, but not using the rules, okay? And then I'm going to ask you to think about how will we use some of these descriptive words with ser or estar. Can I only use it with ser? Can I only use it with estar? Or might it flip-flop and use either one and change the meaning? We're going to think about that next week and use that in some practice next week. ¿Está bien? Is that good? ¿Está bien? Okay. And besides the grammar video, I'm also going to give you, ¿dónde está? Where is it? A little video that talks about, it's a very easy video to listen to because she's going to speak very slow Spanish. And she's going to take you on a little tour of a plaza. El centro de Ciudad de México. Es un tour, un viaje, un recorrido, a little tour en la Ciudad de México, in Mexico City. And I want you to notice some of the easy verbs she uses. Ser, estar. She's going to use hacer, to make, to do. She's going to use tener. You're going to hear her use tener, to have. She's going to use ir, to go. So I want you to notice the easy, high-frequency verbs she's going to use in that video to talk about what people do on a Sunday afternoon in Mexico City. ¿Está bien? And that video won't talk about any specific grammar at all. It's going to be follow the story, see what happens, see if you can pick up some verbs, and maybe as you listen to the video, make a little checklist of the high frequency, often used Spanish verbs that you hear her use through the video. And just like as a little check mark through the video. Sí, está bien? We good? Bien?
Sí.
Okay. Bien. Vale, magnífico. Eso es todo. That's it for today. Boom, boom, boom. Bien? Bien? Vale, perfecto. You'll get some little prompts with that ser estar thing. We'll come back and use that a little bit more after you have time to watch the video and think and mull it over a little bit. And we'll work with some really high frequency verbs next week too. Okay? Vale. ¿Todo bien? All good?
Sí.
¿Todo bien?
Magnífico. Nos vemos, nos vemos. We'll see you guys. Nos vemos el martes. Nos vemos el martes. We'll see you guys on Monday. Y que la pasen bien and have a good time. Que la pasen bien esta semana. Have a good time this week. ¿Todo bien? Bien. And send me any of your little questions or things that you want to specifically work on beyond what we've talked about during this fall session. Okay. Todo bien.
Okay.